Hey, what's going on, nerds? Welcome back. This is No Demos, episode 6, and today we're going to be looking at a very obscure fuzz that you may have never seen before, probably never heard before. I'm definitely guessing you've never held it in your hand before because I've only seen two, and one of them is right here. This is the BM Fuzz Feedback 104. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe I don't know what you're thinking. What the hell is that thing? I like those two things, fuzz and feedback. I like orange. This has to be awesome. Tell me everything you know. Well, sadly, I don't really know anything about it. So that's the point of the video today. The last few videos that we did were longer. They were in depth. I had all kinds of cool factoids and photos to show you. On this one, it's going to be more of a quest, throwing it out there, hoping that someone stumbles upon this video that knows something about BM, the fuzz feedback, anything about this brand or this pedal, its origin, whatever, and contacts me, and we can know more, and we can crack the code of the history of this elusive little orange beast here. So in doing that, let's at least talk about what we do know, which I said isn't much, but we'll give you the little bit of history that I have. So for me, I stumbled across this pedal, I'm gonna guess 2008, 2009-ish. I was digging through effects database, as I still do, and I was looking for things that I had never seen before, right? You could just filter by effect, and I was just scrolling down and being like, what's that? I don't know what that is, what's that? Ooh, fuzz feedback, I like those two words. Let me click on it, and then a picture popped up of this pedal. Not this exact one, but of this pedal. And I thought, okay, that's awesome, and I saved it in my little picture folder of things to be on the lookout for. Now, it wasn't until about 3 years ago, maybe 4, I don't remember, this pedal right here popped up on Reverb. I bought it instantly. I didn't know anything about it, obviously, except that it looked awesome and old, and that's typically enough for me to go ahead with it. So it came in, I plugged it in, it sounded cool, it was different, it was interesting. I took a look on the inside, which we can do now, and I started inspecting to see, okay, what can we figure out? So if we look at this, let's look at the board. The first thing that I noticed that was kind of odd, if I can zoom in a little bit better, is that it says BM 102 on it, and then a little arrow and the number 2. But BM 102 is interesting because this says 104. So what was 102? Maybe that was the original incarnation of this pedal. Maybe this board or layout can become two different things. Maybe there's a version that's just the fuzz that we've never seen. Somebody has, and somebody probably hasn't. I don't know. Whatever it is, that is a fun little oddity right there. If I flip it over right here, and we open it up, now we get into the nitty-gritty here. We start looking at this circuit. So instead of a bunch of transistors, what do we have? We have a couple op amps. We get a date here, which is 1976. There's not much dating going on in this thing, even on the pots. They're just these kind of generic pots that say nothing. But 76 feels right with everything else we have going on here. I mean, these are very 1976-ish parts. I wouldn't think it was 86. That would seem, it just wouldn't make sense with this. We have a couple trim pots in here. This one, I know it affects the feedback, the amount of feedback. So if you turn this up all the way, you're just getting feedback. If you turn it down, when you engage the feedback button, it doesn't come on full on. I've kind of set it where I feel is like the best setting for it. This one, I actually don't know what this does. I didn't get a huge difference in sound or tone when I played around with this, so I just set it back to where it was when I opened it up. But yeah, that's the inside of this little guy. Pretty cool. A little tropical fish here on this tone, I guess rotary kind of switch. All right. So yeah, so I'm guessing 1976-ish, we'll say 77, whatever, in the 70s, which is important because what other pedal do we know? There's only really one other pedal that is a fuzz feedback pedal, and that is clearly and obviously the Boss DF2, which you probably know, and if you don't know, that is the Boss distortion and feedback, or feedback distortion, depending on how cool and hip you are. That pedal came out in 1984, so 8 years after this pedal. Now, here's what I will say. Putting feedback into, like, in the actual circuit of a fuzz or distortion pedal, while it seems to have not been done until this pedal, it is kind of an obvious thing to do. It's not hard to pull off. I mean, I know that myself. Back in 2002, when I was circuit bending crap, I had a DoD death metal that I circuit bent, and I circuit bent a feedback loop that was engaged by a momentary switch. And I had never heard of this pedal, and I had never heard of the Boss pedal. It just seemed like something that would be cool to do. So if I could come up with that idea just randomly, clearly Boss could have come up with that idea without ever having seen this. But it is kind of cool that you could get something like this almost a decade earlier than what Boss had done. And it does make sense. I mean, if you think about the fuzz feedback, the whole point of this pedal and the Boss pedal is that you can get a feedback-like effect without having to crank your amp up to insane levels and get your guitar in front of it and then have to try to ride that wild horse and hopefully tame it, right? So this is something that you can hold down this button. So this is basically how it works. I hold down this momentary switch, and as long as I hold it down, it creates this oscillating feedback on whatever I'm playing. Now, what's cool about this one is the feedback kind of has a cap to it. It never gets overpowering. You can keep playing and you're gonna hear it. It definitely has an oscillation to it. So the feedback tone will kind of waver up and down, and it gets progressively louder, but it never goes over a certain level, which the Boss version does. So you have a little bit more control in this. Volume, distortion, turning it up, you turn it left, which I know is annoying. The tone, I don't know if there's something wrong with mine, right? It's the only one I've ever seen or played. I don't know if there's something wrong with it. These don't seem to do too much. If I have it on 0, it's the loudest. It seems to cut off the highs very slightly when I click it into 1, and then it's very slightly more when I click it into 2. So maybe that's what it's supposed to do. Maybe it is just kind of a slight thing. I played around with a bunch of variations. I played around with it with the feedback engaged, without the feedback engaged. Didn't really seem to do too much. I just typically have left it at 0, and again, it makes it its loudest. So that's basically what we do know about this pedal, which isn't a ton. Now, a lot of people are going to see, and what we thought when we first saw the only other known example, when we see BM in the effects world, typically that means Barnes and Mullins, B&M, who is most famous for the Fuzz unit or the Champion Fuzz, which were made throughout the 70s. They actually would have been made at the same time that this was made. Funny enough, also orange, most of them. So that could be confusing. I don't personally think this was made by B&M. And I'll tell you why. First of all, this pedal here, I bought it, and when I got it, it was in the Netherlands. The only other known example, from what I understand, was also found and came out of the Netherlands. So maybe that's where it's from, right? If we look back on the inside, we take a look what's going on here. One thing we noticed is this switch This is a Marquardt switch, which is a German brand. And if you look inside any of the B&M stuff, most of the components in there are going to be made in the UK. So they have switches made in the UK, the pots are made in the UK, even the jacks. In here, that is not the case. We have these kind of generic pots, no idea where they're made, these generic jacks, again, no clue. I don't think there's nothing on here telling me where these are made. But again, you have a German switch in here. And components just don't match up with any of the B&M stuff. And in fact, I had a B&M Champion phaser from 1976. So if anything was going to match up, it would be that. And when you look at the inside of that, it doesn't. Also, that has clearly a logo that says B&M, which is the logo that we all know. It's not this logo. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is something different. Those letters mean something different, but we don't know exactly what they mean. Now, the final thing to bring up, now that I've said all that about it not being B&M, there is one interesting thing. About a year, maybe less than a year ago, I did get a new pedal to the collection, and that would be this, the Exel Shatterbox. Guess who it's made by? Barnes & Mullins, B&M. And I did notice this kind of funny thing, which is that these enclosures are exactly the same. And if you open it up and look on the inside, pull this out of here. Look at that. Literally the same STC enclosure. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's the only, it's really the only similarity between anything made by Barnes & Mullins and this pedal. But I felt like I have to mention it just to put it out there. In the off chance that this is B&M, I just can't see that being a thing. This pedal, I believe, was made in like 75, 73, 75, something like that. And again, you look at these components, you look at the pot, you look at the switch, you look at the jacks, everything's made in the UK. It doesn't make sense that this would not have that. So, that's all we have. That's all I got for this pedal. Sound-wise, it sounds pretty cool. It's more of like a fuzzy distortion than the other way around. It's aggressive, but not too much so. Like I said, the cool thing is actually when you engage the feedback button here, the momentary switch. When you engage that, the feedback is much more controllable. The other thing to note is that it does not take batteries. It takes one of those old school 9-volt power adapters. And it doesn't take battery at all. So I thought that was kind of interesting, especially for that time period. But it wasn't odd, right? I mean, we started seeing other pedals going into having that exact kind of jack around the same period of time. So that is the BM Fuzz feedback. Like I said, if you do know anything about it, please reach out, let me know. You can leave a comment here. You can send me an email, edskymall@gmail.com, or you can find my Instagram in the description. And thank you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. No Demos, Episode 6. Peace.